Every year on my YouTube channel, I share a new pie recipe that you can try for Thanksgiving and the upcoming holiday season. This year is no exception. Get ready for the incredible Amish Peanut Butter Pie. So for those of you who have been following my channel for a while, you may have noticed that I haven't been able to post as much recently. I've had a very busy year. My family has moved twice this year, which makes it like the fourth and fifth times that we've moved since I started my YouTube channel. So we're always on the move. Also, I got a job this fall at my husband's school where he works. I direct the play and the musical there. So that was amazing, but also time consuming. So I haven't been able to post as many videos, but we're still eating over here and we still love desserts. So I wanted to bring my annual pie recipe to you this year before Thanksgiving time. We moved from Western Pennsylvania across the state and now we are in Amish country. I heard about Amish peanut butter pie, which is a very common dessert in the area at a lot of restaurants. Like there are a lot of smorgasbord buffet kind of places around here, Pennsylvania Dutch food, and that is a common dessert that you'll see on the buffet line. Today we're going to make everything from scratch, and I promise you this is going to be a hit on your Thanksgiving table. I will have all of my fabulous pie recipes linked for you in my description box below. If you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Let's bake.
I am starting with a homemade crust for this peanut butter pie, and this is my mother-in-law's recipe. It is the only crust recipe that I make and that I even enjoy eating. Typically, I just eat the filling out of a pie crust, but this one is unbelievably delicious. So you can see I'm starting by chopping up 2 sticks of cold unsalted butter into smaller pieces, and then I also add half a cup of coconut oil. And I'm putting this all into a food processor. I find that's a really easy and quick way to bring the dough together, but you could also just mix this together with a pastry blender in a big mixing bowl. I also add a teaspoon of white vinegar and a teaspoon of vanilla extract, along with a pinch of salt and a tablespoon of sugar. Then I put the lid on my food processor and pulse this together just a few times. Next, I prep some ice water, so I have that ready as I'm mixing the rest of the dough together. So I added in 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour and started pulsing that together to form some smaller crumbs. And then I removed the little piece in the middle of the lid of the food processor and started drizzling in 1/4 cup of the ice water, 1 tablespoon at a time. And I ended up adding just a touch more than 1/4 cup. You can kind of eyeball it and see, but the dough will actually start to come together in the food processor and you'll know that it's ready to go. And when you take it out, you can feel it really does have the texture of like a Play-Doh. And that's when you know that it's all incorporated. So I floured my work surface just so that I could work the dough together a little bit more because usually there's a few loose crumbs at the bottom of the mixing bowl. And I made this into one large ball of dough and then divided it into 2 pieces and formed those into discs. Then I wrapped them in plastic wrap and refrigerated those for a little bit. Next, I made the peanut butter crumbles, which were so good. They were kind of like peanut butter fudge. You just mix creamy peanut butter with powdered sugar. And I started by using my potato masher to kind of incorporate the 2 ingredients together. And by the end, I switched to my hands just so that all that powdered sugar would get absorbed by the peanut butter and everything would get mixed together evenly. So when you squeeze the mixture together, it should hold, and then you can use your hands to break it apart into whatever size crumbs you would like. Once my dough had chilled for a little bit, just so that the butter and coconut oil would re-solidify, I rolled it out. So I floured my work surface, and for this pie, I only needed 1 crust. The recipe I shared with you does make a double crust, but I could just put that in my freezer and save it for another pie. So I just rolled this out for my 10-inch pie plate, and it's a very forgiving dough. You can see every once in a while I have a little crack around the perimeter, and I can just sort of pinch it back together, and it's just fine. So I just rolled this out and added a little flour when needed so that nothing would stick. And you can flip it over as you roll just so everything is rolling out evenly. And once it was my desired size, I used my rolling pin to wrap the dough up carefully. And then I just lifted this over my pie plate and gently placed it in. My pies are always quite rustic, but I did try to crimp the edges a little bit just with my pointer finger. And then I had never blind baked a crust before, which means you bake it completely through before you fill it because the filling of this pie is not cooked. So what I did, I kind of researched a couple different techniques. I docked the crust, which means you poke it with a fork all over so that steam can release from it. I did that prior to any baking. And then I filled it with some parchment paper and I used dried rice. You could use dried beans or pie weights if you have them. And then I baked this at 375 degrees for about 15 minutes. Then I removed my rice weights and continued to bake this for another 15 to 18 minutes or so until it was nice and golden brown. And again, this is my first time doing this, so it did shrink a little bit, and I'm sure there are ways that I could have helped lessen that. But this crust tastes so incredible, it truly doesn't matter how it turns out looking because you're going to love the way it tastes. So, next, I'm working on the homemade custard pudding layer for this pie. So I'm starting with 2 egg yolks that I separate out and then whisk together. Next, I'm heating up 2 cups of whole milk on the stove. And then in a separate large mixing bowl, I'm whisking together cornstarch, a little bit of salt, and some white granulated sugar. To that, I added the egg yolks and whisked that in. And then for some reason, I don't have a little video clip of this, but I did pour in about, I would say, a half a cup of the hot milk slowly into the egg mixture to try and temper it a little bit. And then things went awry. My camera died, so then I switched to my phone and I was doing this with one hand. And I just incorporated this egg mixture a little bit too quickly into my hot milk. I had turned the heat off at this point, but it had been boiling. And you do want to cook those eggs, but I cooked them a little bit too quickly where they did start to scramble ever so slightly in the mixture. I think what you want to do is as you're pouring, you should be whisking, but I only had one hand this time. So you can see it's a little bit lumpy. I whisked in some vanilla extract and a couple pats of butter, and then I ended up pressing all of the pudding through a fine mesh sieve into another bowl just to get some of those lumps out. And you know what? It ended up just fine. It was so delicious. It gets very thick from that cornstarch. Once it chills, it is really, really thick, but it also has great flavor. Now, you're probably seeing that with this pie, you could take a lot of shortcuts. You could use a store-bought crust if you want. You could use vanilla pudding packets. And there's also a whipped cream layer, and you can use Cool Whip. So this could be a really quick and easy pie. But I thought with Thanksgiving coming up, it would be nice to sort of go the extra mile and do something special and make each layer from scratch. So now we have our homemade vanilla pudding layer. And I will refrigerate this for a little bit just to chill it completely before putting it into my cooled crust. When you refrigerate a pudding, you do want to put some plastic wrap directly on the surface of the pudding. Then it won't get that weird skin layer on top. And it worked perfectly. The final layer to prepare was the whipped cream. I started with 1 cup of heavy whipping cream in a large mixing bowl. To that, I added a little bit too much vanilla extract. I probably only need about a teaspoon, and that was more like a tablespoon. And then 3 tablespoons of powdered sugar. And you could add more or less sugar depending on how sweet you would like it. And I whipped this until it was quite stiff. I wanted to be able to easily spread it on top of the custard layer without anything moving beneath it. And then also just hold up under that crumble on top. So I have my cooled crust. I added in about 2/3 of my delicious peanut butter crumbles, and then I spread the super thick vanilla custard layer over top of that, and then I dolloped that fluffy, fresh whipped cream on top. and spread that out evenly. And then to finish it off, I garnished it with the remaining peanut butter crumbs. This pie was absolutely phenomenal. I loved it so much. I obviously made this a little bit before Thanksgiving, but I plan to make it on Thanksgiving for my family because I think they're going to love it. It's so interesting because none of the fillings have any peanut butter, but you still get that very strong peanut butter flavor. It's not overly sweet, and yet it's just sweet enough. The crust, this recipe, I'm telling you, it is incredible. Just from top to bottom, this pie was such a hit for my entire family.
These little peanut butter crumbles are incredible. Thank you so much for joining me here today in my kitchen, and I'll see you again soon.